What's the source for writing to the Rebbe via the Igros Kodesh?
So the first thing, the most important thing is that the source of writing to the Rebbe. And that's the most important thing, the idea of writing to the Rebbe. It could be long, we won't go into great length now, but just in short, the concept. The Gemara already says this. Someone who has a sick person in his home should go to the wise person of the generation to daven for him. And the obvious question is, why do I have to go to someone else to daven for me? Can't I daven to the Eibishter directly? And what Chassidus explains is that the Eibishter wants us to have a connection to the tzaddik of the generation. And a lot of times, something that's lacking is in order to push me to have that connection. One of the strongest ways to have that connection is through writing. Because when I just think or speak, it doesn't become me. When I write, by Chassidim, when we write a letter to the Rebbe, you put your entire neshama onto that piece of paper. And therefore it's there, and it's by Chassidim. There's a famous line which the Rebbe brings, that Isha niknis b'shleisha drachim b'kesef b'shtar u'b'biyah. The three ways that a chassid is acquired to the Rebbe is kesef, which is maimed, that you give money to support the Rebbe's maistis. Maimed is money that goes to the Rebbe directly. Shtar is writing to the Rebbe, and biyah is coming to the Rebbe. But all three are necessary. By Chassidim, the first way to connect to the Rebbe, even by a Yechidus, there was always the writing of a pan. And when a Chassid wants to connect to the Rebbe, he has to write a ksavis kashrus. The concept of writing to the Rebbe, to the extent that the Rebbe says that sometimes the Eibishter will make something go wrong in your life just to make you write to the Rebbe in order to fulfill the purpose of creation. The Rebbe says, "Was darfst du suchen?" Why do you need to have something go wrong? Why don't you just write to the Rebbe without it? So that concept is something that always was and always is and continues to be for all times, and it's something to remember how important it is. A chassid has to write to the Rebbe. Now the Rebbe said in Tafshin Yud that when there's a time that you have a hard time writing to the Rebbe directly, you can put it inside a maimer, because chassidim tzaddikim put themselves into their Torah. Just like the Eibishter puts himself into his Torah. Where do we find the Eibishter in his Torah? Tzaddikim put themselves into their Torah. And the Rebbe puts himself into his Sfarim. So when we want to write a letter to the Rebbe and give it over to the Rebbe is inside his sefer. We open a sefer, we put it in. Now, there was a anhaga which was there by Chassidim for days, and something which was in fact, it's a very old Jewish custom that when you have a question and you don't know the answer, you open a sefer, and Bashgacha Pratis, where it opens, that's giving you the answer. By Chassidim, it was even stronger and more powerful. Chassidim were in Russia, they couldn't write a letter to the Rebbe, they couldn't send a letter to the Rebbe. Sometimes they would open a siddur, because the siddur was also written by the Alter Rebbe. And the answer they found because the Rebbe puts himself into it. And this is something which is even stronger when it comes to a Rebbe, because the Rebbe puts himself into his Torah, and therefore he gives you his Torah is his answer to you. And that's something which became something for Chassidim throughout the generations, at a time when you couldn't directly write or connect to the Rebbe, so you found the Rebbe says the Rebbe will find a way to answer. But one of the things that Chassidim have always found is when you open a sefer of the Rebbe, Bashgacha Pratis, it opens up, and there you have an answer that the Rebbe is talking to you. In addition, you have it in our time, you have it very strongly, the fact that it happens tens of thousands of times, and so many people find it, which means the Rebbe is, in a sense, you can see that the Rebbe is giving his green light to it. So the general idea, the most important thing is we have to write to the Rebbe. We have to get our connection to the Rebbe. And one of the mailas of dafka writing and opening and getting an answer is because it becomes pale mamish. We see it b'chush. Just to say one small story. I have a Jew that came to me a few years ago. It's probably 5 years ago. I get a phone call a few days before Pesach. Are you having a Pesach Seder? I said, yeah. How much does it cost? It doesn't cost. Come to the Pesach Seder. Everyone's invited. So the guy says, but can I come? Can I bring my wife? I said, sure. but she's not Jewish. She's not Jewish. It's a whole halacha issue, because it's Yom Tov, you can't cook for a goy. If you don't invite them, they can come, whatever the case was. Anyway, he came to the Pesach Seder. An Israeli guy ended up in South Africa, and Nebuch living with a goya, and he decided he wants to have a connection with the Pesach Seder. After Pesach, we invited him again for Shavuos. Then he was going to Eretz Yisrael. Going to Eretz Yisrael for business. We said, why don't you write a letter to Rebbe? He writes a letter to Rebbe. He opens up the Igros Kodesh, and the Rebbe says you should learn Chassidus every week. Since then, we're talking 5 years. He comes every single week to my house. He puts on tefillin. We learned Chassidus, we learned Tanya, we learned Sichos. We went through the whole Tanya. Sichos, he says he would never miss this for anything because it's the oxygen that he breathes. Now imagine, we said, ask the Rebbe for a bracha. The fact that he opened and allowed himself to be open for an answer from the Rebbe is certainly something that added, because today he learns Chassidus every week as a result, and it changed not just that, it changed many, many things in his whole life. And so we see it in a lot of times. A person asks a question, and I've seen it in my life countless times. A lady comes to write because she can't have children. The Rebbe says tznius, the Rebbe says kashrus, the Rebbe says mezuzahs, whatever it is. They strengthen those things, and it works. They have a baby, but it's not just you ask for a bracha, you got a baby. That could happen even without this. But now you got a direction and something which changed your life, because you have a emunah pshuta that is coming from the Rebbe, and this emunah pshuta comes and brings that you actually change your life in the way you behave.